This is the Final Round Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now your host, Chris Marquardt. Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this edition of the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast. Appreciate you joining us and hanging out for a little while on this one. We have Dan Delaney joining us in the studio for episode number 99. Jason's got a full docket of plans for Dan, both happening before and after the show. As you're getting ready for the year-end stuff, right?
That's it. At this point, I will say Empire's Banquet is coming up soon, but Lancaster's Banquet is here in basically just over 2 weeks. And that's going to be actually first banquet in 2 years, 3 years?
Since 19.
19, and that was calendar year 19.
Calendar year.
So it's going to be
December of 19.
Basically the first banquet in 3 years. So 2 years worth of champions to celebrate at Lancaster, and 2 years worth of Wall of Fame people to induct as well. So it's getting busy.
What did you finalize so far?
Not a heck of a lot, to be honest. Not a heck of a lot. Just talked a little bit about what's going on and kind of where we stand, and all the real work will take place after the show here. Excuse me.
Bless you.
I must have COVID.
Wonderful. You too? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's...
Facebook filters just kicked us off. We're done.
Facebook filters just kicked it? Oh, because I mentioned COVID?
Are you serious?
Should I start talking about...
I drove all this way for that?
Yeah, should I start talking about vaccinations and how effective they are and all the rest of that stuff, mask wearing and...
I've got 6 toes on 1 foot right now.
Yeah, right. So, we got a little bit of work to do. I definitely don't want to make this show about my family. I mean, obviously, my uncle and my dad are both being inducted onto the Lancaster Wall, so we got a little bit of work to do from that standpoint, just for my own family's sake. But I felt like it'd be a great opportunity to bring Dan on, just because he's very involved in the Wall of Fame. I mean, being a Wall of Fame member himself from a few years ago, he's very involved in that whole process, and it's a great opportunity at this point to kind of talk about some of the people that are being inducted that honestly Dan is going to know a heck of a lot more about than I do, to be perfectly frank. So that's why I felt like it'd be a good time to have him on.
Do we want to jump in before we dive into all of the stuff with Dan and Lancaster about the reasons why circle track drivers are more prone to fight when it comes to drag racing?
I'm okay with that.
I have to stay neutral. My career has something to do with that.
Well, have we got the list for the Wall of Fame?
Yeah, I got it right in front of me.
Yeah.
My memory's good, but I did bring some cheat sheets just so we didn't exclude anybody. First off, I have to say I'm still, after 2 years, overwhelmed that I was inducted into the 5th class by my friend Jason Hofield, who did an outstanding job. And I joined a wonderful list of guys that preceded me, the likes of Jimmy Otti, Jimmy Zakia, Freddie Hahn, John Torelli. I could go on and on. Just overwhelmed when I got the notice. But in 2020, sadly, there was no banquet because of COVID. But the track has agreed to recognize both the 2020 Wall of Fame inductees and the 2020 points champions. So, I applaud, Vito and Mike, Sylvia, Victoria, and the track itself for doing that, because those people need to be recognized. It would be a shame if they wouldn't. So this year's banquet and a Wall of Fame induction ceremony with the champions is going to be action-packed. There may be less dancing, but there'll be a lot more applause for what's going on. But probably one of the special inductees to the Wall of Fame, if we can start there, is we all call him Vince Rastelli, but it's Enzo Rastelli, which is Sharon Hughes' father. He'll be 90. And they ran cars back in the 60s, called Vinnie the Pooh. And then, of course, his son drove the wild Fiat that everybody knows, and then obviously the alcohol funny cars. So that's going to be a real good night. He's a wonderful man. Everybody loves him. And then Sharon herself is going to be inducted. which I applaud. She'll be the first woman on the Wall of Fame.
I didn't. I have to say, I didn't think of that.
Yeah, she's the first woman on the Wall of Fame. She's a championship driver in her own right back in the 90s, winning the IHRA race up at Empire.
Yep.
Back then, she beat me first round, but I stuck around to shake her hand at the end of the night.
You may have told me that, but honestly, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
She beat you in first round in quick rod.
Quick rod, yeah. I forget the year, maybe 92 or 3, but congratulations to her. And on top of that, she's being recognized as a driver in her own right, and also a contributor, which is special because she's run the junior dragster program at Lancaster. I believe they just finished the 28th year.
Wow.
And a lot of those young junior dragster drivers have gone on to be world champions. Pete Mcdurry just was the top dragster world champion for PDRA like a month ago. He came out of the junior ranks. Vic Puglia Jr., he's very involved and quite a fabricator, machinist, very intelligent kid. Bobby Bauer Jr.,
Yep.
He's gone right up the ranks. He's a heck of a tuner in that. And I could go on, but, that's pretty special. 28 years running junior dragsters, no matter what track it's at. But, they get 20, 24, 25 cars at Lancaster on a Tuesday and on a Saturday. It's a pretty special show. And there's some kids there that are 6, 7 years old that, man, you'd swear they were Don Garlits. I get a charge out of watching them climb in their cars and do battle. And you know what? I watch the parents, who most of them are my age, and the grandparents. And it's not like Little League baseball that you hear all the horror stories on. They shake hands. They enjoy each other's company. It's for the kids. And I applaud the track for giving them that venue to race in. And Sharon, God love you, honey. I've known you a long time, and I'm happy for you. But along with that, I had mentioned Vic Puglia Jr. Well, his dad, who was a great modified production racer in the day, he's being inducted. Sadly, he's deceased maybe 5 years ago. Cool dude, rough and tumble guy, just could do anything. They all worked on their car back in the day, real hard. And so he'll be inducted. That was nice. John Shamil, he's going to wind up the end of the 2020 class. John's been an all-around maintenance worker, groundskeeper, fixer of all things at Lancaster. And, that's part of why the place still exists, is because people do what they do in their job. And, sometimes you couldn't open if you didn't have people like that, and like Gary Westfall, who gets there at the crack to make sure everything is done.
I was going to say, Gary Westfall is a perfect example.
Yeah, and he's a Wall of Famer, I think the third class. So, again, I'm proud to be part of that deal too. So it is a very special evening, and it'll be very nice to see all these people get the just due. And,
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. Chris, it looked like you had a puzzled look on your face at one point in time. Like,
yeah, I was trying to remember who we were talking to that talked about the pedigree that came out of the junior dragsters. I mean, with that amount of time, you're bound to have somebody move on and win a championship. But there's been a significant number of drivers that moved out of that.
Well, go to the NHRA, and you've got Eric Enders, you've got Sean Langdon, all Richie Stevens. These guys all drove junior dragsters before they turned professional at a very young age, and then they became world champions in the pro ranks.
Right.
And there's a ton of them out there, and top dragster, top sportsmen that we don't even know about.
What's crazy to me is that with the junior dragster program, and I would say, see, you have something to add.
Yeah, he always tells me not to say anything.
Pardon me?
No, and I'm always trying to keep him quiet. You just sit over there and be the production guy. No,
I think the last time you didn't even get involved.
I want Chris to talk more. So
I'm just talking about locally. I mean, just looking at, and I can't remember who it was that we were talking to that was talking about running the program for so long, and it's striking a chord that it was related to.
It was probably Kathy Keekle.
I think.
Because she is part of the junior program. I think she was part of the junior program out at Skyview, and now she is somehow involved in the junior program at Empire. So it was probably Kathy.
And she was talking about, she had names that were from up here.
Yeah,
right.
And I didn't mean to cut anybody short up at Jerry's track either.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry, I'm just not that familiar with them. But back in the day when I was racing, there was some great kids that were up there, and now they're in their 30s or 40s. And I'm sorry I excluded you. It wasn't intentional.
No.
But, yeah.
Not even anything
Yeah,
like that.
but there are some people out there. You start talking to them and like, oh yeah, that's my past. I'm like, holy cow,
Well, what I was going to mention is what's crazy now is the fact that you have people that the junior dragster program has been around long enough at 28 years at Lancaster that and most of those drivers that participated early, they were second generation drivers, right? Most of the times their parents were already racing full size cars for probably a while, but you now have kids that I'm going to call them kids because I'm old, that came out of the junior dragster program who's now racing their kids are getting into the junior dragster program, right?
Let me give you an example, if I may jump in.
Go right ahead.
Fourth generation Gregory family. Right? Dennis and Phil, who are the great grandparents.
Right.
Then there was, Vinny and his brothers.
Yep.
And then there's, second generation Nora and her husband,
Matt.
And now they're 4 kids. So
I wonder if Matt ever raced juniors.
I don't believe so. I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
Huh.
But fourth generation Gregory's.
Yeah.
And I know them all. Well, there's 4,000 Gregory's, so
Well, and you mentioned Pete Mcdurry. Pete Mcdurry Jr., right? So
I raced against his dad.
He just had a daughter.
Correct.
He has 2 kids or just one? I think just one.
One that I know. Yeah.
One that he knows of. Haha.
Oh no, I'm not going there.
But yeah, so his daughter.
Forgive us.
When can you? I think you can start racing in juniors at 5 years old.
5 or 6. Yeah.
So yeah, basically, I fully expect within a few years that Pete's daughter will be racing in junior dragsters.
Then you got PJ Marston, who's taller than me. I don't even know how he gets into junior dragster, but God, he's only 13.
Yeah.
And he was last year's track champion at both Empire and Lancaster.
Oh, really?
How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say that with going back to Sharon a little bit too. I know. Did we have Sharon on the show?
I thought so. I'm not sure now.
Boy, I guess that's what happens when you have
100 shows.
100 shows, right? It's hard to keep track. So, I have to say that obviously Sharon has her own racing accolades, but what she has done for Lancaster overall, it's not only the juniors, but it's the bracket finals and all the work that she's put in there. Obviously, she's been the race director for, at this point, probably going on 20 years, I would guess. It's been quite a while. Overall, she's very, very deserving and has done a lot for Lancaster.
What you don't see is the stuff that goes on other than the nights that we're all there watching. It's the long hours, keeping tabs on points, collecting this, collecting that, getting results out, making sure everything runs smooth once she gets to the track. And I'm not saying just her, everybody.
Right.
From the girl that takes your ticket to the person in the ET shack and that. You don't realize what goes on. You go there at 5 o'clock, unload your car, make a couple laps, and go home.
Right.
They're still there until 2 in the morning doing what they need to do. And that's every track.
Even the banquet, right? It's going to be the same thing. Yeah. People are going to show up at the banquet hall and
think that's it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
She has put a lot of work into organizing this whole
thing.
And
they all have. Sylvia and Victoria Antonicelli, that's Vito's wife and daughter. They put a lot of heart and soul into that, and they contact the right people. Just getting a venue's tough.
Right.
Especially in these days and ages, So, so there's a lot more that goes on. I can tell you the hours.
Which I was going to go, but now everybody knows that I have COVID. So
he doesn't have COVID.
He'll
be riding in the back of my truck back to Churchville. But so there's a lot to be said for that, and that's what the Wall of Fame's all about. I was inducted, and not to harp on that because I'll bore you to death, but it's not how many times you plant your car in the winner's circle. I'm a fine example of that, but I look at some of the other people on that wall, and it's what it's meant to local drag racing. speed shop owners, myself involved in my trade plus racing.
Well, yeah, and I will say that
And
again,
then the history of, your dad and your uncle especially, my God,
Well,
it's,
yeah, and I was to say I don't want to. Again, I don't really want to focus the show on my family being inducted, but
I understand.
my dad is a good example of the racer who is being inducted not because of his results out at Lancaster. My dad did not win a heck of a lot out at Lancaster. What did my dad do out at Lancaster? He raced there a lot.
didn't he had a famous saying for Friday nights. What was it? I can't remember. Go ahead. You can
He
tell
did.
it now.
He would basically tell people, don't get married or don't die on a Friday night because I won't be there. I'm going to be at Lancaster.
Yeah, that's it.
That's what the guy lived for, right? I mean, he loved his drag racing, and Lancaster was his home track, and we traveled a little bit. I mean, we went to Empire once in a while. We'd go to Cayuga once in a while, but for the most part, he was all about the, as kind of Billy calls it, the Friday night bowling league. It was, I want to go to Lancaster on Friday night. I want to race my car, have some fun, hang out with my buddies. And he was just a staple at the track. And he won a little, but I mean, my dad's not being inducted because of the number of times he won out there. My uncle's a different story. He had some really good success, not only at Lancaster, but traveling as well. But that's not my dad. And that's the type of, I mean, I'm not saying that everybody at Lancaster that should be inducted into the Wall of Fame should just be, participants. But if you have people that have been out there racing for 30, 40 years, they should be recognized, for God's sake.
And most of those people, as we've matured, have made a difference somewhere, somehow. That's how I kind of look at it, too. It's not just because, you were a rock star on a Friday night for a couple hours. There's more to it than that.
Sure.
I think. And like I said, when I received that notice, I'll be very honest with you. I sat at my desk and cried. I'm like, holy cow, why? And I guess you don't realize what you mean to a lot of people, and talking with some of the other inductees, because this is still fresh. This is still only 6 and 7 group going in. Some people have mentioned that, like, holy cow, it's what an honor. And yes, it's local, but that's our home. And
Right.
We lived for Friday nights. I've been going there since I've been 10. I'm 64 years old. I'm not ashamed to say that I used to hang on the fence waiting to go. And you talk to guys my age, same thing.
Right.
They just couldn't wait to get there. Couldn't wait to get there. And then here we were, kids sitting in the grandstands. I can name 100 of us. And we all turned out to be racers and business people that I'd say half of us, our businesses are related to the sport. Mine certainly is, for the most part. But, I look at Jimmy Salemi,
Right.
We shared a piece of drywall for a separation between our shops for a long time till I built my building, and look what he's doing with his sister-in-law and his brothers and stuff. My God, they put Tonawanda on the map.
Right.
And that, what can you say? And that all came out of Lancaster.
Yeah. I mean,
Or I should say, let me Western New York. Lancaster, yes, but Western New York. We don't want to cut anybody short. But,
but I mean, again, you look at, Jansen obviously is.
Well, your Uncle Dick drove for them.
Right. I mean, they're doing obviously a lot more business around the world now. I mean, they sell motors around the world. It's pretty crazy. But, I mean, back when they got their start, I mean, it was the local tracks, and the big one really was Lancaster. I mean, Lancaster was the closest, and I would bet that 95% of their business was for racers that were going out to Lancaster on Fridays, and at the time it was probably even Thursdays, right? Because they raced Thursday nights, so it was Thursdays for the drags and Saturdays for the circle track. It would be, my guess, is the bulk of their customers.
I agree.
It's not anymore, but that whole business basically spawned out of that.
Yet that still exists, though.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And, they haven't given up on us little guys.
I always feel bad when I go to to Mike and ask him to freshen my motor, just because of the fact that he's building bazillion-dollar supercharged motors for guys that are racing and pro modified, and these guys with their tractor pulls that have 6 supercharged engines on their tractors, and I'm like, hey, I have $3,000 that I can spend on freshening my motor. Can you do it for me? And they've always treated me really well, and
they're still family shop.
Yeah, they don't care. You don't have to have $1 bazillion to spend to go and have work done by them. But like I said, I always feel bad because of the fact that I know I'm not their best customer by any means.
You bought them lunch.
Yeah, I don't even know if I spent enough money with them to buy the shop lunch at this point. But yeah, they're just a great group of people for sure.
Agreed.
So that was so that's the sixth class.
Yeah, that was 2020.
Is 2020,
which sadly, like I said last year, there was no banquet, or they would have been honored that evening. But the 2021 class is going to be inducted as well as the same night, which is, like I said, a great way for the night to be in the banquet. If you're holding a ticket for the banquet, you will be definitely treated to a wonderful night of, local rock stars and legends, past, present, future. So, make sure to come out. If you haven't gotten a ticket, I'm sure they can still find a way to get you in the door if you hurry up and call Vito's shop or something. Sorry, Sylvia.
Right.
I know it's late, but let's pack the house, right? But 2021, it's a great class. Again, Glenn Hughes, who is now the official starter at Lancaster, also raced back in my era in the late 80s, early 90s with his dad Ford and everybody else, and he was a great racer as well, and contributes now by being a track starter, and he's a great starter out there and keeps an eye on everybody, and keeps the starting line clean along with the help with the guys behind him. So again, well deserved. Danny Fay, boy, Fay and Knight Corvette, Hemi in that thing. I think it was a F modified production. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that, but pearl white paint, candy flames that were ribbon flames on it. I know I was on the fence watching that, and boy, could Danny drive, and talk about a great family, him and his brother Doug. And like I said, Danny was involved with Donnie Knight, who of course ran your uncle's car after they got rid of the good guy's car, and Donnie Knight purchased it, and he was the driver. And Dan still is racing with his son and his nephew and his brother Dougie. They have immaculate Corvettes that run in the 470 class, at Empire.
Yep.
But on a Thursday or Friday night, man, those guys were just rock stars out there. Good guys, well spoken. Dan Fay's the Dick Clark of drag racing. He still looks like he's 35. So we love you, Danny. But again, here's somebody that you younger kids should really get to know his story and why they're out there, and of course now third generation. They'll be up racing juniors, but his son and Doug's son run the shop now, Empire Automotive on Broadway, and God, what a legacy. But again, when I was a kid watching, that was a cool car, and Danny had many cars before that, and I'm sorry I can't remember. I think it was Fay and Wilson and 62 Chevy 2 or something like that, and I apologize, I don't have that note, but well worth it. He deserves to be on there. He contributed, just good family, good guy, meant a lot to drag racing, still does. So, and then the third inductee for 2021 is Mark Wallgate. And if the name sounds familiar, Mark's back working at the track. He was the starter when I was racing.
Right.
And talk about, he was the Buster Couch in Lancaster. You know who Buster Couch is. Kept a clean starting line, kept everybody in order. He knew everybody's routine on burnouts, and when Frank Melvelso did a burnout to the finish line and I'm sitting on the starting line, he'd look over at me and I'd just shake my head. Yeah, got aluminum head. She's still cold. We're okay, and it would take Frank about an hour to back up. Just kidding, Frank, if you're listening. But he knew everyone's routine and just made sure everybody, there was no yelling or screaming or, finger pointing or anything. And Mark's one of the good guys out there. And he helped Mark Schiffley with a lot of things. And he's just been a good friend to everybody. And again, well-deserved. He's got a lot of history at 57 Gunville. So good for him. And the last two, personally, my two favorites, if I can, but it would be Jason's dad, John O'Field, who near and dear to me, along with his Uncle Dick. Sadly, both deceased. Great legacy for both of them. Jason already touched on John. You could go on for hours about those guys. But Dick was a unique individual, skyrocketed to superstardom, being the first driver and builder of the Motown Missile with Teddy Spihar, won a national event. Don Carlton replaced him at the wheel. He and Joe Pappas crewed that car. They were revered, still revered. And we speak to Joe every now and then, and he's still a wonderful guy. Dickie's missed. You could write a book on those guys. Half the stuff you can't print, though. So we'll keep that for another conversation somewhere else. But that came out of Lancaster. They ran the Cirillo Motors car, you know. What was that, a Comet? Comet.
That was a Comet,
yeah.
yep.
Comet, you know.
65 or
60.
66?
Around the corner?
No.
I took a picture of it just in case you had one.
Oh, but
What year? Is it 60, mid?
It's a single headlight. So I think that it's 66, 67.
yeah, that was the era of this car.
Yeah.
You know, and then they kept it on Moore Avenue, you know,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
you know where you lived at one time.
Right.
Yeah. I think everybody lived on Moore
I
Avenue.
would say a lot of people live there,
Yeah.
right?
But,
The house could tell a lot of stories.
Oh my Lord! Like I said, not for here. But Dickie, yeah, he's still held in high regards as being one of the Chrysler gurus back in the day, and you know, intelligent, you know, self-taught. He was a great sportsman too. I believe he played tennis and stuff and ran track, and you know, and he was very good at that. Intelligent. Left after the missile deal ended with Spihar. He worked for Richard Petty Enterprises for a while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
What?
yeah, he could
How
tell
did
you
that not come up?
it just did.
Well, yeah, it wasn't for an extremely long period of time. This was when, and you know, I guess I wish I was here or I had the biography in front of me, but he worked for Direct Connection, and Direct Connection started building these specialty cars, and they at then some point, I don't know if they sold the division off to Richard Petty Enterprises or they just subcontracted it to Richard Petty Enterprises.
They were like ASA cars or something,
Yeah,
weren't they? Yeah,
yeah.
like Dodge Darts or you know,
I think
sports.
they were. I want to say I
Dodge
thought they
Sports.
were. Is that what they were?
Yeah, Dodge Sports, I think.
Okay.
They looked like Dusters. That's what the
I was
Dodge
going to
Sport.
actually say, we were talking about Volaris. I was going to say maybe that they were
Same body
Volaris.
style,
Yeah.
but the Demon or the Sport was a fastback, you know. But yeah, Petty Blue, you know. And then Dick would always tell us about the tail light. You had to run a brake light in the thing, and he rigged it up so he could just turn it on at any time, and the guy behind him would slow down, or whoever was driving the car, and yet they weren't on the brakes, you know.
Right.
That's the stuff that, you know, now it's okay to tell those stories.
Well, it's funny because and Chris, you might know, and I realize this is a generally a drag racing show and not a circle track show, right? But I was mentioning to Dan on the way up here, I was talking about this guy in the early 80s who scammed NASCAR and ran at Talladega.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the guy's name was.
I can't either. I was just reading another story about it.
Okay.
Every couple months it shows up on a couple of these.
Yeah, we were laughing about that driving up here. He's
Right.
telling me, and
He made off with a ton of money.
Oh yeah, it was pretty crazy,
and
right?
stiffed everybody on top of it.
But
yeah.
the newspaper guy, I watched this video, and this newspaper guy that they interviewed, who interviewed this guy prior to the Talladega race, said, they were asking him, how does he get away with this, right? It's like, look, and this is pretty much he said, racers are just like fishermen. They like to stretch the truth at times about their accolades, right? And I have to say that I'm telling this because this was my uncle. When I asked him, it's like, look, how did you get your first factory ride, right? How did this come about? It was essentially that, I lied, right? I mean, I told them how great I was and all these great things that I did, and they said, yeah, okay, here's your car. So, yeah, from there, then it was a matter of, he had to prove it, right? So once he got the Comet from Ford, then he went out and he had some success and did pretty well. And at that point, he was able to, turn that into the Dart from Dodge. But, he...
and then Spihar found him.
Right.
You know?
But he was he certainly had a very good racing career, but he was like any other young kid that wanted to go racing.
He did that till the day he died, buddy. I'm just telling you. God love him. I miss your uncle for sure. Uncle Dickie. Yeah.
I don't think I ever knew that he spent time working for.
Yeah, and then he was a procurement for Chrysler.
Yeah, it wasn't long that he was
yeah.
at. Yeah, it wasn't long that
He
was at
procured
Benny.
minivan stuff, and he hooked me up with a great sponsor, Joe Jerninek, out of Design Metal. I had Joe for a couple of years, then Billy had him, Billy Lieber. And, you know, Joe was just one of those guys that enjoyed being around the sport, and, you know, he helped me out, he helped Billy out, and, yeah, you know, they were great dear friends. And like I said, he was building minivans or something, wasn't he? Procuring.
I mean, he was involved in. I mean, honestly, he was involved in a bunch of
All
different
kinds of
cars. I
builds,
remember
yeah.
seeing,
think-
you know, drawings of the Dodge Neon before
Yeah.
that was originally released, and but yeah, essentially body panels. That
Yeah.
was my uncle's
Stamping plant stuff,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yep, exactly. That was his area of expertise.
And if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, or shall I say mistaken, I think him and Teddy had something to do with that Dodge Little Red Express truck at
They
one
did,
time.
yeah, yeah.
Which, if you guys remember from the 70s, it was a, you know, single cab, short box, step side, cool Dodge truck, you
Yeah.
know, that was red with, you know, it was called the Little Red Express. I believe him and Teddy had a lot to do with that. So,
Yes,
or,
I think
you
that
know,
I think the Little Red Express, if I remember correctly, I think that came out of Specialized Vehicles, which was
I'd imagine, but they
yeah.
sold a ton of them.
Oh, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I actually lettered one for a guy, well, maybe 3 years ago. He had me change a name on it, but I lettered it exactly like the same word, the different words, but in the same style.
Same style, yeah,
And you
yeah.
know, put the striping back on, all by hand. You know, no decals, and the guy flipped. So it was pretty neat to actually have one in the shop after all these years, because not a lot of them around anymore. That was a 70s or like maybe a 1980 vehicle, but yeah, pretty neat stuff. But you know, so the 2020 and 2021 Wall of Famers, there's 9 inductees, and it's pretty special. And I don't think the impact has hit these people yet until that night when they get handed that plaque and people applaud for them, because it's pretty neat. And every inductee will be inducted by someone they've chose. So that's special too. The easy part is just saying thank you and sitting down.
Yeah.
But you know, but it makes for a special night, which it should. And then of course all the champions will be recognized. And I'll just read you a quick list if you don't mind. I know you got other things you want to talk about, but in 2020, the Millar top was Jan Winkowski, and that was back-to-back championships. You know, that's the Lunatic Fringe car.
Right,
You know, so
right.
good for him. And then Gianni Manzeri Mod was Mason Fix, who's been on a tear for the last couple of years. That's Jimmy Fix's son. Good kid, good racer. Still young enough to kick everybody's butt right now.
Right.
So he'll be a powerhouse for years to come. And Buffalo Choppers Bikes and Sleds, Mike Peters. He's also the 2021 Bikes and Sleds champion.
Oh.
So good for Mike, back to back. Tread City Discount Tire 2020 was Cody Winkowski, who's Jan's son. So how neat is that? Father and son to be track champions on the same year.
That is cool.
That's got to be a proud moment for both of them, especially Jan, of course, being back to back, and then his son wins the same year. And then Junior Dragsters in 2020, pretty good standout in his own right. Great baseball player, hockey player, Ashton Hallis. He was the 2020 Junior Dragster Championship winner, and he's also runs the PDRA, and I believe he finished 6th in the PDRA this year. So there's your junior dragsters out touring around the
Right,
country with
right.
his parents, you know. So I think Tim, his dad, told me he put on 8,200 miles on his truck this
Wow.
year, just, you know, going to junior dragster stuff. But then the 2021 same sponsors, thank God for those guys too. You know, Mike Millar, he sponsors the Millar Top 8, and his nephew Jimmy won it. So that's kind of neat, you
Yep.
know, and that's his first big championship. Gianni Manzeri Mod, which is Paul Cambia's restaurant, he sponsors that class. It would be Jeff Curl, and that's, you know, there's the Curls. They've had a few championships. I think 6 at the track amongst the dad and
I would say, yeah,
Jeff
I mean,
and Greg.
Greg,
so-
I would say Greg. How many? Greg won.
Yeah, exactly, and good guys on top of that, you know. So you can't fault that. That's well deserved too. And I believe Jeff won the GRS like a year ago as well.
Oh, really?
In Mod, yeah. So that car's got some miles on it. So, but tough racers, and that's what it takes. You win a Lancaster on a Friday night or any track around here on a weekly night, and then you're the track champion. Oof, I'm telling you, it's you did your work.
I don't know if we've talked. I'm sure we've probably talked about this on the show, and I know I've talked about it out at the track, out at Empire. eighth mile racing is really hard. It gets right down to it. I mean, eighth mile racing on any particular round, if you don't have basically a 20 package or better, you at that point, you really are at severe risk of losing. And that's the thing at Lancaster, is that the races are so close. To have someone to go out there and be back-to-back champion and be able to go rounds, it's like they really have their stuff figured out to be able to be that competitive and win that many rounds.
And you're not talking 4 rounds. You're talking 7, 8 rounds, when,
Right.
if they even do a buyback.
Right.
And I mean, you've earned your night.
Right.
And again, at any track around here.
Right.
I don't want to focus just on, 57 Gunville, but, I raced for a long time, and, I was loaded up after first round, but then the nights that you win, you earned it.
Right.
And there's a lot of guys that have never experienced that. And I was lucky enough to do it a couple of times, and I'll tell you what, you go home thinking you just won Indy, I'll tell you that. But to win the championship, I can't imagine, because it is tough. And you ask any of these guys, none of them were a cakewalk. None of them.
Right.
Maybe back in the day when Odd was racing and he had everybody covered, but so even the junior dragsters.
Oh yeah.
I mean, those kids they'll claw your eyes out. So I'll just finish real quick. There's only 2 more here. The Tread City Discount Tire 2021 champion was Cal Wishman, and his dad was a great drag racer as well. And then the junior dragster champion at Lancaster this year, 2021, was PJ Marston, whose dad raced sleds, Pete Senior, and PJ was also the track champion this year at Empire. And I'll tell you a quick side note: when they were all going to the bracket finals, PJ decided he'd represent Empire, so someone else could represent Lancaster. Because I don't know if Jerry really sends a junior dragster contingent or not, but I just know that somebody had told me that was a pretty stand-up deal for that kid to do that. So, and I believe Ethan Platt went to represent Lancaster.
Okay.
So here's a kid, 13 years old, has it figured out. So
Right.
I applaud him and his parents, and I applaud Sharon for raising those kids as good champions as well, and Jerry's program as well out of the Empire. So, like I said, I have the information on Lancaster Banquet. I apologize, I don't have any affiliation with anybody at Empire to have a list or anything, so my apologies to them. But this is pretty special to me as well, as I try to help out the way I can, as Jason well knows, and try to do a little more. But this was my home track when I was racing, and it still is. And I don't miss too many Friday nights, so there's always a place for me to hang.
Yeah.
So,
I was saying, certainly no reason to apologize about Empire.
We broke down the Empire champions a couple weeks ago, didn't we?
I think we actually mentioned them. I mean, we can
and they're well deserved too.
Absolutely, yeah. But
so.
we could certainly dedicate. I mean, this show really was, meant to talk.
Lancaster.
Yeah, meant to talk about Lancaster, right? And the Lancaster Wall of Fame, and we can certainly have a whole another show, and potentially get Empire champions on like we have in the past.
We
we
still have a solid 3 months before we need to start worrying about what the season's going to bring.
Yeah,
Plenty of time
yeah.
between
We haven't even had snow yet, so so
right.
But,
Definitely don't feel like you have to apologize.
I don't want anybody to think that I take sides or anything here, so I apologize for that. But
I mean, I realize. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people don't realize. I mean, officially, I mean, you're not an owner of Lancaster, right? You're not employed by Lancaster. You're just somebody who's very passionate about Lancaster, and you help out with the awards banquet and the Wall of Fame ceremonies. And,
all the drag racing, actually. So as you well know, but it's home. Always has been.
Lancaster is how small it is, right? I mean,
it's
between the endless T's of Lancaster, because you can see it coming.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it going, but you don't know where to go.
Yeah.
There's no
Exit 49 on the New York State Thruway. Right. Turn left, turn right. And that was always the tagline. And I mean, God, I was 12 years old, and they'd book in funny cars. I knew how to get there.
Right.
I knew how to get to Niagara.
And I would have to say, I'm not saying it's, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. I'm sure it's not the safest thing in the world to do, but If you ever want to watch a jet car or a nitro car,
You'll never stand closer.
No better place to do it than Lancaster.
Yep.
It's pretty incredible.
Yep.
Because, I mean, they have the fences up now, so
but still, it's a wall away.
Oh, you are literally 5 feet away.
Looking down into the track, right?
Oh, you can stand right next to the fence.
You can stand right next
Other
to
than in the
crazy.
grandstands, but or stand on the oval. Just hope it doesn't take out
Yeah.
the wall. But
I've had the pleasure of holding the Christmas tree at Lancaster when the jet cars went down before, and it's pretty amazing the force of the thrust essentially coming back.
There's almost like a lull after they pass you,
Right.
And then all of a sudden it hits you, just like on an aircraft carrier or whatever. But
the nitro cars, I mean, the exhaust is pretty much blowing right in your face. It's really unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of great places to go and watch fuel cars, but you'll like Dan said, you'd never be closer than at Lancaster.
Never. And that's the draw, and that was the draw for me too, growing up. That I could, if you know where the food court is at Lancaster, it's pretty much at the starting line and goes to the grandstand. As a little kid, 10, 12 years old, I'd stand there. It was a snow fence where the starting line was on one side.
Literally a snow fence.
If you were in the pits, that was going to save me. But if you stood on the other side, it was Armor Corps.
Right.
If you know what that is, that's guardrail. And then there was some chain link fence, and I remember watching, hot foot or, jumping bean or something get crossed up and come right at me. And of course I was, scrambled away, but
the snow fence. It's funny. I totally forgot about the snow fence.
Oh yeah.
It's funny.
And it would lean as guys
Right.
they'd just lean forward,
So, any big show, right? Any big matchup that people wanted to watch, it's like everybody would push towards the snow fence, and the next thing you know, it's like the snow fence is going like this, and people are getting closer.
And it was literally a
closer. I
snow
can't see.
fence. It wasn't it was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was
Sadly,
funny.
it's gone, but it was fantastic, But that's part of growing up. And then, when the oval became part of the drag strip, which a lot of people never knew that existed because the oval was separated
right
until 77. It was funny because when they opened up turn 1, they put it on a swing gate, and I've got pictures with this big I-beam with a tire sticking out, and we used to go driving by this thing at 100 miles an hour and turn what would be coming out of turn 4, or us if we were on the drag stick turning in turn 4, was wide open. There wasn't any barriers or anything there, so if you broke, you could actually turn off.
It's funny you mentioned that because I never
that
really
was
thought about it.
That was into the
Well,
late
I was gonna
80s.
say, I never really thought about it until now. What do they do now? Do they put
Oh,
Jersey
it's all
barriers up?
it's all Jersey barriers.
Okay.
Yeah, they've got it pretty much all the way down the end. Vito has lined the traps in the shutdown area with some good Jersey barriers. They seem to be adding more weekly.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be nice if they could pour and get it, solid. But they will contain your car, and and they've cleared all the trees out, and they've ground stumps, and they've put sand at the end, and I'd have no problem going down that track, if I was still racing. I'm just saying, I know a lot of guys, that's why there's a lot of 8th mile racing on quarter-mile tracks. Cars are getting fast.
Mm-hmm.
They're running a lot of nostalgia shows. It speeds up the show, but Lancaster has always been an 8th mile, and we grew up with it, so we're accustomed to it. And you're right, it's a fast show. You got to be dead on to win, So there's no real catch-up in the 8th mile.
No,
Right.
if
you miss the tree, you're in trouble.
Done.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah.
I gotta say, so many times this past season on the full tree, it's like, we're a half a second into the race and Jason's already lost.
Took you that long? Half a second, that's one ball, buddy. Depends on what tree.
Right, yeah, it's definitely tough. One guy that...
we won't tell the John Oldfield story about
there's
myself.
lots of them. And I would say one of the things, and I know I've mentioned this in the past on the show about the oval being separated from the drag strip. My dad actually raced a guy at Lancaster who was killed. The race that my dad raced, he went up and over the dirt embankment that they used to have separating the circle track from the drag strip. And when he came over top, he landed on the roof of the car and was killed. And my dad came back and my dad, told somewhat of it's not a humorous situation, but it was somewhat humorous story. It was like, I come back from winning like my first round ever, and I'm like, where the heck is everybody? It's like
Yeah.
Hey, I won. Isn't
Yeah.
everybody all excited? And it's like, yeah, next thing you know, you go down and find out that the guy had crashed and
Yeah.
actually got killed. So, yeah, there's a reason why they have the wall there now and not a dirt embankment that you
Right.
can use as a ramp.
Well,
to go
they
and
opened
over.
up that track, and I believe it was 77 after I was out of high school, and they made it a D-shaped oval, and it really sped the deal up. Asphalt modifieds were getting faster, Chris, as you probably know. God, I remember going there and watching Richie Evans and Maynard Troyer and Bill Rafter, and I can go on, and the Trichlers. And to watch those old cars in the 70s come out of turn 4.
Chris
they
is
were
drooling now.
Oh yeah, right. And then, coupes and the coaches they call them. They were all 37 Chevys and whatever, and these things would rumble around there in like 20 seconds, and now they're like 12. But back then, 10-year-old kid, I actually had the guy that took me was my dad's cousin, Don Brown. God love him. He never knew what I made of myself, which maybe that's a good thing. but he would take me to the races because my parents weren't involved, and he liked to sit down low. Well, because the oval was separated from the drag strip, I couldn't see the cars on the front straightaway.
Oh, right.
Because it was elevated.
Yeah.
So, about the only thing I said to him all night was, could we move up a few rows? I can only see the roofs, and we did. And, we'd end up sitting in those same spots every week. And after the races, they opened up the same gate at the starting line. You climbed across and you went in the pits. And, I got my autographs, and it was a great time, just like it is now. Every generation has their heroes, whether you're a street racer, there's some kid that looks up to you, or even an adult. They love your car for whatever
Sure.
reason. They may not even know your name.
Right.
And then there's the fastest quick 8 car on the ground. It's got a fan too.
Right.
So you don't know what the draw is to that fandom. I know. Quick story. Pete Mcdurry always tells everybody, Pete Jr.
Yeah.
He loved my car.
Yeah.
He had a dad that raced.
Right. Right.
So, but he still tells that every now and then. And, that still, makes me feel pretty good. And, Pete's what, 35?
I think,
So,
I think Matt Gregory tells me every time I see him out at the track, it's like, this was always my favorite
Yeah,
car
yeah.
when I was a kid. And,
Yeah.
I
He
mean,
had
he
a
grew up in
dad
a
that
racing
raced,
family,
and yeah,
right?
and grandparents that raced, yeah. So, like I said, that's why stuff like the Junior Racing League, no matter what track it's at across the country, you need to support that. You need to keep these kids encouraged. They're going to go on to either be involved in the sport or not, but for the most part, they keep their fingers in it, whether they race street when they become, they age out and they're 17 or 18, they got a beater out there, or, they've got a dad that builds race cars like Evan Salemi, his dad John, and his uncle Jimmy Salemi, G-Force Race Cars and Resolution Racing. My God, what a great family to grow up in. 20 years old and he's out there tuning a Pro Mod, just
Sure.
like Mikey Jr. is with his dad at Janssen. And
Right.
like I said, Vic Puglia Jr., he's got his act together, and they try different things, and there's always something to do in this sport, whether you're behind the desk, in front of a microphone, painting them, lettering them, building motors, welding chassis, you're the starter, doesn't matter. It's a great sport to be involved with.
I would say when you're
I
never,
have
was like
yeah.
like I am, you host a podcast
Yeah.
like this, and I say it looked like you had a question to ask.
Well, just an observation, something that was posted on Facebook the other day. They posted Bob Miller, who's a videographer and photographer from Land of Legends Raceway,
Okay.
Ontario County Fairgrounds. Used to be Canandaigua Speedway back under the dirt banner stuff. Posted a picture of a car that was Steve Pasaric's car.
Uh-huh.
And he noted that Steve Pasaric always had Giuliano Auto on the side of his car, and this car hadn't had the logo put on there yet. So they started talking about this car, and then this person chimed in, and that person chimed in, and this car made all these rounds. It was, it ended up that Adam Depew had the car, and he ended up getting a win in it, and all of this combinations and stuff. And it's, when you rediscover an old car like the coaches and stuff from back in the day, the modified days, when you get to rediscover that in circle track racing, it's really special.
Very
But
special.
it's not the same type of special in drag racing because cars aren't wrecked as frequently,
Right.
and they never have to get found. You just have to scratch off enough paint to realize that's the car
Right.
because it never really leaves the track. And I was talking with one of our students had a birthday right before we went on break, and we were talking, and I don't know if I ever told you this story or not. She indicated that she really liked Corvettes. We were just talking arbitrarily about something. Oh, there was an old truck picking up a student. We got talking about cars, and she said something about Corvettes. So I pulled up your page and showed the picture of yours
Yeah.
to her, and she just thought that it was the coolest thing of all time. Just thought that it was so cool. And I said, well, this thing's been a race car basically its entire life. And hearing about the cars that have so many times on the show, we've said we're found here or still raced there, changed hands here, and you can track this lineage all the way back, 40, 50 years sometimes. It's just really cool that's out there so regularly.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
That it's you don't always get that type of longevity out of a car in circle track stuff because of any number of factors between wrecks and technology and rule changes.
Right.
Or it was changed or whatever, or on the off chance that you stumble across an original modified that's been stored in the barn by the car owner.
Right.
It just never, it got parked one day and that was it.
I mean, my uncle's Dart, so he got it first, sold it to Don Knight. Don Knight sold it to
Jerry Nowacki.
Jerry Nowacki, thank you. That's kind of where I think from there, what happened to it, the history becomes a little clouded. But I mean, yeah, that car still exists. Last time I saw it was 15 years ago. A guy was basically bracket racing it out in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But yeah, the car still exists and it's still like it is. I just saw a story on Cayuga's. It had to be Rob Potter that posted it, but it was a picture of an old car, and it's like, yep, this so and so still has this car from 1972, and is right now restoring it, back to be a street car again.
Right.
And it's amazing how many drag cars like that, kind of still exist.
Well, my old car, my first Roadster, Jim Slummy built with Jeff Hoyt in 1984.
Mm-hmm.
I got a call last summer. A guy bought it for the 5th time. It's changed hands.
Wow.
I sold it to a gentleman by the name of Mike Etter back in late '97 up in Canada, and it's still in Canada. And it's changed hands, and it went to Lowdown to be updated only because it couldn't get back across the bridge down to Jimmy at G-Force, who originally built it. But the kid called G-Force saying, I think this is Dan Delaney's old car.
Uh-huh.
And Melanie answered the phone.
How did they know?
Just the history behind it or whatever. And believe me, it wasn't, that unique other than it was pretty good looking street roadster, full fenders, running boards and all that. So it had its own personality to it. It had been changed after I had sold it, just aesthetically, and, obviously the motor is long gone and whatever. But it's changed hands and stayed in Canada. And there's some guys that knew the history of it, but this kid called down to G-Force and got Melanie Slemmy on the phone, and she goes, I'm too young to know that. So she goes, you better call Jimmy, I'll give you Jimmy. And then Jimmy goes, oh my God, you better call Dan. So of course, an hour later I told him every nut and bolt that was on it, but yeah, we verified it was mine, and that's still kind of cool. And then, Lowdown called me and, verified that as well. And then the kid sent me some pictures, and yeah, it was mine.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned,
and that was 1984. So do the math,
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Dan Fahey. So
Yeah.
I mean, the Corvette that you were describing.
Mm-hmm.
So that car got sold to Doug Heaney, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or did Heaney own it first?
Oh, that I can't tell you. I'd be lying if I told you I knew that. You probably got, yeah.
Because I think.
But they got it back.
Oh,
they got it back years later, and I think it made its demise at Cayuga.
At Cayuga. Okay, so that
maybe
was
15 years
that was the
ago.
car that they crashed at Cayuga.
Yeah,
then?
but that
Okay.
was the original
Right.
Fay and Knight car. Sadly, yeah.
And was Dan driving?
No, Dougie, I think, was driving.
Oh, Doug was
Yeah,
driving.
yeah.
Well, I was pretty sure that it was Doug Heaney, I think.
Could very well be. They would know that history.
Did I tell you about when I was talking with Jeff Schumann about the cars that they run with their nostalgia dragster, and some of the stuff was lost, and
Yeah.
I think it was an Underwood car.
Okay.
He had a special way of doing the hoop over the front suspension to hold everything in place,
Okay.
and it was like only his style of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were starting to redo the front end configuration, they didn't want to cut this up. They didn't want to lose that element of this car.
Mm-hmm.
So before they did any of the work, Jeffy built a rig to hold the front end together so that they could do it without interfering with that hoop. So the car went someplace else, and they were talking about how, well, you did a great job, replicating, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no.
That's
No,
original.
we didn't replicate it. We left it alone. We didn't touch it. So
You'll enjoy this. We were talking about, that's the
I
car.
think that was the Showtime car. Was that the Showtime car that they were telling us about?
Oh, yeah, it might have been. Yeah, it might have been.
Well, that's
I
cool.
got to see that car. It was in the trailer. I got to see one of them.
Oh, did you really?
And they wouldn't back it out. They said they couldn't. But yeah, we got to see it up in the trailer. It was cool.
Yeah.
After
But you're a stock car guy. I got a call this summer, or this fall, this spring from Bob Davis. Bob Davis has been involved, worked for Gore Distributing, Genesee Beer. And he handled, because he was a stock car fan, he handled all those accounts. He's the guy who brought you the 10 cases on a Friday night for, Saturday Jenny Cream and that. Great guy, he and his brothers. They've got a fab shop. He restores cars. He's, pretty neat dude. So anyways, retired. Gives me a call, and he says, I got a project for you. Yeah. He's been involved in the gas racing series and other things, too. So what do you got? He goes, I have Merv Treichler's Monza Speedway Modified. Really? Yeah. I bought it finally after asking him for years, right? And there's like you said, bucket of bolts, but it's the car. He redid this car. It's ungodly beautiful. Merv won Daytona in this thing. Car would go 200 miles an hour down the backstretch. This is 1978, 79, 90, right? I can't get in it, so I can't imagine, 427, I think, was in it. Lapped the field at Watkins Glen. NASCAR finally told them, calm down, you're making us look bad here. Pocono, it was a speedway mod, it's a full front end. It was a super speedway asphalt mod. And it used to sit outside a shop, as the story goes, and Bob finally convinced Merv to sell it to him. And it was still in Sanborn, New York, sitting next to the Red Barn,
Wow.
where him and his cousins, Gordy and Roger, and they built cars in there. So he brings it to me. His reference material was pretty good. Jim Prohaska had lettered all his cars. Jim sadly is retired. Shop's closed. I admire Jim to this day. He lettered cars for your dad.
He did?
Yep, and everybody else. And God, what a talent. So, but he brought these pictures, and knowing how Jim could letter, I could decipher some of the blurry black and whites. And Bob and I talked about it. I'd do a rough sketch. I said, this looks like it was. Bruce Roll stopped by, if you know who Bruce Roll is. He's a great cartoonist in the West New York area, Motorsports. But anyways, they bring me the Monza. And, oh, my God, talk about reliving in my childhood, So they got it in there, and I did it the way they wanted to the pictures, because it was lettered a couple different styles, only because of different sponsors on it. Well, the icing on the cake was after they picked it up, obviously it was a job, but it was one of those jobs you just love doing, and you put everything you got into it to make it right. I get a call, why don't you join us at Merv's barn? We're going to push it out of the trailer so we can see it. I think I was there before the phone conversation was over, and I hadn't seen Merv Treichler in 45 years. Yeah. But when that man shakes your hands, your hand disappears. This is a working man, 82, 83 years old now, couldn't have been kinder. I never met him, per se, other than asking for his autograph when I was 12 or 13, Just a rock star at 57, Gunville, going around that half mile back then, him and his cousins and brothers, and they still have the florist shop in the greenhouse out there in Sanborn, and they pushed that thing out of the trailer, and I watched him, because I had seen the car for a week at my shop. His body English changed, and you could just see him reliving it, and he couldn't have been nicer. Kristen Rubel and her husband came out, shot a bunch of film on it. Bob surprised all of us and gave us burgundy hats, which was the color of the car, with the number 58 embroidered on it. And it was just epic. But there's a car that sat next to his shop. That's the only car he never got rid of. And then, of course, Tom Rubel and I snuck in the barn and walked through it, and we were like, oh, my God, look at the stuff in here, We'd still be in there. But, long story short, yes, you're right. They get beat up, they get banged up, they get bent, they get, there's nothing straight on them. this car was showroom condition when it left my shop. It was beautiful. And it's gone, I think, down towards Atlantic City where Bob's brother shop is to be finished. And they'll actually race that car like...
they have a nostalgia series.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you're on your honor and you don't bump into the guy ahead of you.
Yeah.
But it's pretty neat. So I know because of COVID and some health issues in that, the car never made it to the track. But it'll be finished and they'll be out, running around, Watkins Glen with it here probably this summer. And they've been invited to some other things. But it's a pretty neat deal. I asked Merv if he would sign my hat, and I brought a program from when I was a kid, and he's a lefty, and he signs it, and he signs it Merv 58, and then he puts a $sign after it. I'm like, He goes, you know why I signed my name like that? I said, no, but this will be good. There'll be a reason you told me. He goes, because the first time I went to Lancaster and I won money. And I never signed my name Merv Tricler. I signed it Merv 58 with a $sign. There you go. Now, he did sign my program with his full name, which was very nice of him to do that. And it's what a great keepsake, And I'm sure he's heard it from all fans. Oh, God, I was 10 years old watching your race, But, yeah, that was one of my top 10s.
Yeah, it's funny because I know the name, but I didn't know the car.
Oh.
So it's like, while you were telling the story, I looked the car up.
He ran dirt with Gremlin. He was a hired driver. This guy is, he's Wall of Fame. Phew. And then some, right? Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Merv Tricler around.
When you're talking about the Monza, I was picturing a different car.
No, I got pictures on my phone. I'll show you when we're done here. But and I can just imagine this thing going around Daytona at 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Do you remember Dick Montgomery?
Of course.
So he has parts and pieces, last I knew, of Jeff Bodine's Monza, the last car that he ran up here.
Really?
He went down.
Because Jeff used to race in Lancaster. Yeah. Number 99, he had like a Valiant body on one car.
I think it was a Monza.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking my era. Caesar led most of the laps back then, but Jeff was up here quite a bit. And of course, God, almost every Saturday night, Richie Evans and Maynard would pull into the pits. Oh my God. You know what? It was probably $250 to get in back then. And of course I was small and underage, so right. I never paid to get in, but now looking back on it, man, you were treated to unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Even Lancaster, the Dragstrom Empire, you go out there and you just go back and look at the names of the champions and the history, and sadly, I think maybe this generation hasn't been educated as to who ran there in the day, et cetera, et cetera. The sport has definitely changed, but we need to keep it alive with obviously a wall of fame like Lancaster does, and just you go to the track, you look around, you're looking at somebody, I'm like, God, I know that guy. Who is he?
Right.
And then you realize, and even at my age, I ran into Bob Elliott at Empire a couple of years ago. Bogus Bob Elliott. He ran jet cars, he ran funny cars, he ran comp cars, he ran modified cars. He announced at Cayuga, and I introduced myself to him, and I said, RW, RJ, Dan Delaney. Danny boy, here's a guy well into his 70s remembering me, and I'm still in awe over the guy,
right.
So, Wally Clark and F.J. Smith, great guys, great personal friends. You forget they're in their 70s.
Right.
And I don't mean 71, you got to keep it alive. And sadly, we just lost Donnie Cloak. God, what a great racer he was. Always had Mopars and Hemi cars and modifieds, and you got to remember these guys, or this sport's done, because then there's no history. Like they said, NASCAR died when Earnhardt died.
I will say that it's one thing with the Wall of Fame that I really hope we get the opportunity to do this. I mean, obviously there's going to be exceptions, but and I will say, this is not because of my dad or uncle, but I hope that the people that deserve to go on the wall, for the most part, get inducted prior to them passing.
Correct.
It always stinks. I mean, you see the professional athletes, right, when they get inducted into the Hall of Fame, and it's after they've passed, and it's like, man, that's just really too bad. And it's like now we have an opportunity where we have this, where we didn't have it for the longest time. That I hope that we can get everybody inducted that deserves to be inducted onto the Wall of Fame. Well,
we have to thank Rob Kozak for this.
Oh yeah, I know.
Rob Kozak, spearheaded this deal, 8-9 years ago in its infancy, and it, after he somewhat stepped away from it, it's continued. Thank you, Rob. What a great insight, and thank you to the track, for the people involved when it first came out, that, they took it and ran with it. What a great idea. I hope someday that we can do a permanent type of wall.
Right.
Some
type of permanent structure
yeah,
or something.
Yeah. I mean, we all have tradesmen out there. Maybe we can all get together and figure something out that, we don't have to go get a permit for. And, really make a, concrete, no pun intended, effort to do something more structural and permanent. Like I said, obviously financially it's going to be an undertaking, but thank God that the track honors it the way they do, and I think it's pretty special. I mean, we make a 4-foot by 8-foot banner with our pictures on it, and it's up there, and I've caught people looking at them, walking up to them, taking pictures with the banners, and adults showing their kids, oh, here's so-and-so or whatever, and there's a story behind it, and that's pretty special, and, it's... all tracks need to do that. And I applaud Rob for having that great idea. I applaud all the management over the years at the track and, current management with, Vito and Mike and Sylvia, for following through on that. It takes up a lot of time at their banquet, but I'll tell you what, it also brings out the past racers and friends and family, and it's like a reunion, and it's a wonderful deal. And like Sean Beatty, our great friend, he says, we got to keep it going. We got to let these younger generations know what preceded them. It wasn't all Honda Civics and, and stuff like that. There were guys that had Hemis and Corvettes and, blown Fiats and street roadsters and, dragsters made out of stop signs and what have you. But again, I'm grandstanding here, but it's pretty special. And, I love the sport. Needs to be kept going, and we need to tell people this. Just don't let it fade. Try to remember it, because when Garlitz and Prudhomme and all them guys are gone, that's a sad day.
I say, did I see Garlitz just turn 90?
Yeah, probably close to that, anyways.
Yeah.
I saw Red Farmer is going for surgery.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He's still racing. He put off the surgery until the off season so he could get recovered in time to race next year. Yeah. It's something to do with his heart. It was on Facebook.
There's.
If he wants to keep racing, he's got to have it done.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing, honestly, that the number of people that are out there that are still doing it.
Buzzy Ruderman still races.
Yeah.
Successfully.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say Has Karamessini's been out in the last couple of years?
Well, his granddaughter is driving the car now.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, up until about 2 years ago he was, and they interviewed he qualified for one of the last races at Pomona when he was their Top Fuel, and Gary Gerald, who was still the announcer, I was out there when he asked him this. He goes, Greek, that was his nickname. He said, tell us what your longevity is here, why you can still race the Top Fueler. And he just smiled, he had a great sense of humor. And he kind of walked away from the camera and came back, and he just went, Kessler. Which is, booze.
Right.
I didn't want to say that, but if you heard him say it, Gary Gerald turned to the camera and goes, I got nothing. And that was it, and he just walked away, because that's your longevity. God love you. And nobody ever really knows how old he is. He's well into his 90s now, but he's driving a Top Fuel car in his 80s.
Yeah. I know he was in his mid to late 80s when he was still driving, which is pretty incredible. But I'm with you. We got to hopefully, I think we've seen a decline overall in participation in certain different types of classes, and I really hope that we can keep the sport alive. And
I think like I said, I apologize. I can't speak for Jerry and Clara and Empire, but watching what goes on at Lancaster Wednesday nights, which is their grudge race night, and that it's big out there, big, and it brings a lot of I don't want to say kids, but they're kids to me out there with, again, I hate to say it, Honda Civics and, race burners and whatever, but they're there.
Right.
And they're racing and they're having a good time. And some of those kids come back on Friday night.
Right.
And either race their car or watch real race cars. Not that theirs aren't, but most of them are street cars. You watch Jimmy Millar go, $4.99 in a full-bodied Camaro.
Right.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Right? And they're like, they don't know what kind of car it is, but they're
Right.
like, wow, and hopefully, and like I said before, there's a lot of talent that can be used out there. You don't have to sit behind the wheel to be involved in drag racing. You can be management, you can be R&D, you can be a machinist. You can, like I said, you can paint, you can letter, you can weld. It takes all kinds.
Right.
You can be an IT guy, kind of like yourself, and there's all kinds of. You can work at a racetrack, even in the concession stand. It doesn't matter. You're involved in the sport. God love you.
I did that too. I actually was reading an article earlier today about my dad, and in the article, my dad was saying that at the time, his dream, let's call it at the time, was to see me get in the seat of the car. And the person that wrote the article commented that, well, the first step, if you want to do that, is you need to get Jason out of the tower on Friday night working for the track and get him in the car.
That's right.
And I just, for me, I love the sport, and I worked in a whole bunch of different ways to basically be out there helping people, and whether it was my dad or my friends or just working for the track itself. I don't know if you consider doing this program, if it's, for working for the sport or not, but
sure it is.
Why?
Absolutely it is.
I'm not saying Chris knows. I like to talk. You could probably get me talking about any subject, but I don't know that you could get me to come out to Seneca Falls on 100 different occasions to talk about I don't know, COVID or whatever. Right?
They're going to cut us off if you keep going that way. Yeah.
So.
No, and you're right. And it's. Same thing. It's been said. You've been in my shop. We end up sitting on the benches talking until your wife calls and says, "Where are you?
Yeah, where are you?
Yeah,
you coming
I'm
home
just
anytime
leaving."
soon? Right.
Yeah, right. And here I have one more photo album, and we start telling war stories and that. But that's the nice part about it is that you can leave and I can stay there and keep working, or a customer comes in. That's part of owning that type of business. Yeah, a guy like Mike Janis, that's a busy shop. It's a little more involved in what I do. But, he takes the time and talks to you, and then he, kindly says, hey, I got to get back to work or something, I don't know enough to do that, unfortunately, but I enjoy that, and that's why my name's on the door. And if you've, I had two wonderful people show up at my shop the other day out of the blue and surprised me, and we shot the breeze for a good hour, and he goes, oh, I got the dog out in the truck, Bill Balzer and his wife.
Okay.
And he goes, can I bring the dog in? Absolutely. That dog played with Indy's old toys and everything, and made me the happiest guy in the world that day. And they just came out. They showed me something. It was a great surprise. When they left, I went back to work. And you know what? It didn't. You can't do that if you're working at the plant, right? Yeah. Right. So, I've been blessed that way. A lot of guys have been blessed that way. I remember when Jim Slemmy and I both were in the same building for years. Oh my God, we'd eat lunch. The guys would eat lunch together and laugh and all that. And that was growing pains of being what goes on. I remember your dad going to Joe Schmitz's place, right?
Right.
How many times did they sit on oil cases shooting the breeze and nobody walked in the door?
Right.
It goes on in every trade, and we're just lucky we can do that. But it's all for the love of this sport, whether it's stock car racing, dirt car racing, drag racing, bikes, sleds,
So you see that, kids? Get into drag racing.
Yeah.
Make yourself a career and
yeah. Spend your inheritance. Yeah.
Well, what do you need to know?
Yeah. You can ask us. Yeah. No, but we both been blessed. You had your dad and your uncle. My God, how much cooler could that be, right? And then
when you grow up in it, I'm not saying that I didn't have a cool childhood, but when you grow up in this sport or doing whatever, right? If your dad was Michael Jordan, you probably were like,
he's
oh
still
my God,
just your dad.
I'm sure it was great, right? And it's like, you got to meet all those NBA players. It's like, well, that was just
That was
That's
Uncle
what-
Mike or
that-
whatever.
that was how my
Yeah.
childhood was,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, I didn't really realize, the stuff that my uncle had accomplished. And again, it was partially because of Don Carlton's passing that, that was tough for my uncle. And
Oh, yeah.
when Don Carlton was killed, my uncle didn't really want to talk about that stuff.
Right.
And it
He
was like,
very seldom did, by the way. Teddy would talk about it,
Yeah.
but Dick didn't.
and it wasn't until really later in life. I mean, I'm going to say by this point in time, he was probably 55-ish, 55, 60 years old, where the nostalgia thing and some of the history started coming up.
Yeah.
And that's when he was a little bit more open to talk about it and embraced it more. Before that, he really didn't want to talk about it. It was,
We'd walk around Indy, and people would stop him and Joe Pappas for their autographs. All them years later.
yeah,
That's how recognized they still were, and still revered.
right.
Not
right,
not just, hey, that's an old drag racer.
right, right.
you know.
But anyways.
Yeah. So it's all pretty cool. But yeah, there's careers out there, and before you know it, you retire. But do we ever retire from this?
I would say for all of us getting old, maybe drag racing funeral home director or something.
No, let's not go there. Let's not go there. Yeah, it's but
That
yeah.
person could have some cool names for their cars, huh?
Good, yeah.
I got a whole list of them.
Yeah, for sure.
I've lettered most of them.
What do you think, Chris?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably be doing it again here before too long.
Probably.
Yep.
Boy, the new year,
The
2
calendar.
days, huh?
Yeah.
Phew.
Yep.
Can you
Can't
imagine?
believe it.
So we're looking at right now. We're loosely looking at like the 13th of January.
Right before the ceremonies at Lancaster.
Yep.
I should have my speech done by then.
All right. Fantastic.
Well, I sure hope so. Yeah.
Let's,
Thank you.
You want to plan on that then?
Yeah.
All right. Sounds
Yeah.
good. Plan on seeing everybody again on the 13th of January. Hopefully you and yours had a Merry Christmas. Have a safe and happy New Year. We sure do appreciate you tuning in again, once again, for episode number 99 of the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast. Dan Delaney joining us in studio. Jason making the trip out. Now you guys have a lot of business to conduct, so I wouldn't want to keep you any longer.
Yeah, monkey business. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here. We'll see you next time.
Cool.
This has been the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. We'll see you right back here again in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.